him. He was my best friend for 44 years. I met Mordecai in a small village in the south of France called Tourette-sur-Loup in 1957. And we took an immediate strong liking for each other. And we came, as Bruce just suggested, we came to share an apartment in London in 1958. The top floor of a dilapidated Victorian house at Hampstead, furnishings by Charles Dickens. I was directing plays in British television. Mordecai was staying at home, writing his next novel, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. When he finished writing it in 1959, he gave me the manuscript, asked me to read it. And I did. And I told him that not only was it one of the finest Canadian novels ever written, but one day I was going to go back to Canada and make a film out of it. People laughed at the absurdity of such an idea, for at the time, there was no film industry in Canada whatsoever. But for the next 12 years, it was always in the back of my mind. I struck out a few times trying to get American funding for it. There's some amusing stories, but I'll save it for after the screening. It'll make more sense. But finally, in 1970, the Canadian government set up a federal organization to subsidize Canadian films. 12 years of dreaming finally became a reality. At Cannes last week, Richard Dreyfuss, after 40 years and an Academy Award for Goodbye Girl, told the audience there that Duddy was the best role of his life. I'd have to agree. Last fall, when Bruce Goldstein learned that my film was being restored, he immediately wanted to have a special screening of it, months before it was declared a Cannes classic. As always, Bruce is far ahead of the curve. A visionary. He's a great benefactor to all filmmakers, and I offer you, Bruce, my deepest admiration and gratitude for the screening of my films.
Thank you.
He's an amazing man. By the way, the beautifully restored print that we referred to earlier is the one that you will see tonight. It's amazing looking. Okay, on with the film. There's a Q&A afterwards. I hope that you'll stay and we can talk then. Thank you.
And we only have one mic, so I'm going to give it to you.
Thanks.
And Ryan has the other mic. If you have a question, he's going to pass it to you. When you finish your question, give it right back to him, please. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. You directed the...
Wait a minute, we've got... We're over here first, then we'll go to you.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. I saw this movie 40 years ago.
Speak into the mic, please.
Can you hear me, folks?
Yes.
I saw the movie 40 years ago, and I probably haven't seen it since. And it's just a striking movie, and Dreyfuss is a revelation. My question to you is, I don't know what Dreyfuss did before. How did you come to assemble the cast? You had your book. How did you pick Dreyfuss? Did he audition with a lot of other actors? Where did he come from?
Well, when I said to the producer of the film, if we don't get a great Duddy Kravitz, I'm not making this film. And I went all over Canada and I auditioned in New York as well, here, and still didn't find anybody. And things were getting desperate. And the producer said, "Ted, it's 7 weeks from shooting." We had to start shooting for a variety of reasons. And I said, I haven't found anybody yet. But I made a Western in Israel with Gregory Peck. And
That's pretty funny.
funny idea. And the casting director was one of the legendary casting directors, Lynn Stallmaster. Lynn's, if you examine post-war to 2000, all the great films that were made in those 50 years, he cast them all. He was an amazing casting director. He cast all my films. And anyway, so I phoned him up and said, "Lynn, look, I got no money. I'm making this film for $750,000. That was the budget, $750,000. And I said, he said, "Don't worry about the money, Ted. What's up? We'll work together. You'll make it up to me the next film." And I said, "I'm trying to find a lead." So he said, "Well, send me the script." And I explained it to him. I sent him the script. 2 hours after he got it, he phones me up. He says, "Ted, I got to tell you, It's one of the best scripts I've read in 5 years, A. B, there was an actor who was born to play it. And you've never heard of him. His name is Richard Dreyfuss. I said, you're right, I've never heard of him. And he said, I said, well, can I see any film? He said, well, he played a small part in Dillinger. He played Babyface Nelson, but I wouldn't see it if I were you. I said, well, why not? Well, he overacts a bit. Excuse me, Lynn, you're suggesting somebody for Duddy Kravitz who overacts? He said, Ted, I'm telling you, I'm going to bring the 10 best young actors, 10 budding stars, and I'll bet you end up with Richard Dreyfuss. I said, okay, please fly down. So I flew down there and auditioned 10 people. And you know, I've been living, as I said to you before, with this film for 12 years, and the book, of course, for 12 years. And I always saw this as a Russian Polish Jew, brown eyes, brown hair, you know, typical. And in walks Richard Dreyfuss, and he's a German Jew with blue eyes. I thought, oh my God, oh no, so I had set my heart on it. Oh no, this is ridiculous. But this Lidstone master has flipped his wig, blue-eyed Jew. And then I said, oh, okay, Mr. Dreyfuss, read the material. And he opened his mouth and it was electric. Electric. And he just gave it a great reading. And that's how he came about to be in the, I cast him. And he was going to cast 2 parts. He cast Randy Quaid as well. And when Randy came into audition, the door opened and Randy kind of stood there. He said, you're cast. And next, any other questions?
Well, tell us about the other actors, Joseph.
Oh yeah, you want to know about the other actors?
Yeah.
Well, I'd worked with Jack Warden in the Western, so I knew Jack Warden.
Israeli Western?
Huh?
The Israeli one?
Israeli Western, yes, he was in that. Micheline Langto, I'd seen in a Gilles Carle film, Canadian film called The True Nature de Bernadette, The True Nature of Bernadette. I'd seen her in that at the Cannes Film Festival in '71. Take a lot of pictures. I knew Dan Amelia, the guy who plays the drunken documentary film director. And I'd worked with him in London, because I lived in London for almost 20 years. So I knew the English actors. And Joe Wiseman, I just knew him from Viva Zapata. He played the journalist in that.
And Dr. No, of course.
And Dr. No, yes. Anyway, next question.
You directed Johnny Allegro with George Raft in 1949, I believe.
What was that?
Did you direct Johnny Allegro with George Raft?
No.
I thought you did.
No, I didn't. I like the film though. I wouldn't take credit.
I thought you directed that. I had a copy of that film. I just wanted to ask.
But he didn't direct it.
But he did it.
I can't answer any questions, but I'm sorry.
So I read that George Raft didn't think much of himself as an actor.
That's why
I'm
he's
sorry.
not
I
in Duddy Kravitz.
thought you directed that film. Thank you very much.
Well,
Next.
Next. This one here.
Right here, Ryan?
Ryan down here.
Okay.
Hi, Bruce mentioned that you had
Get
directed.
the microphone closer to your mouth.
Bruce mentioned that you had directed a version of this for television.
Yes, when I was in England, Mordecai and I, we shared an apartment, as we know, we did a lot of work on British television. I directed he wrote 2 plays, very interesting television plays which I directed. He did adaptations for me. And he actually did the screenplay for my first picture with James Mason and John Mills called Tiara Tahiti. Also did the screenplay for Life at the Top with Lawrence Harvey and Gene Simmons. So we continually worked together. And it was a great relationship, he and I. I used to say to him, I love working with Mordecai because I don't have to use words when I speak to him. But, and then we decided we adapted the hotel sequence in the picture, the Jewish hotel up on Saint-Agathe. So we adapted that as a kind of 48 minutes rather. TV play. Just that segment alone, him arriving and what happened to him and losing all his money and all that and getting all the money back.
So this was a live broadcast, not a filmed piece?
Yes, it was the days of live television. It shows you how old I am. But I used to say to people, there's no marijuana, no coke, no hash that gives you a high, like directing live television drama. I never used to sleep for 3 days afterwards. I'll tell you one amusing story. I used to, in those days they had single sponsors. I did General Motors Theater, and I did the Chase and Sandboard Hour. When I did the Chase and Sandboard Hour, the music was Smile by Charlie Chaplin, you know. Smile when your heart is aching, smile when your heart is breaking, etc., etc. And it also, when you do live television, boy, the butterflies in your stomach when they say, 10 seconds, 10, 10, 9, 8, and there's butterflies in your stomachs the size of Pegasus as their wings beat. Ready, 3, ready for the music, hit the music, fade up by 1, sue the title, kill for Christ's sake, kill him! Dissolve the kill, sue the title. The guy was standing here, switching it for one pen, and I was waving my finger in his face, and he'd switch from one guy to another. And this one goes on for an hour, like that. What? Dissolve, 20 years later. I'm in a lovely restaurant with a beautiful woman who's very romantic, and we're gazing each other in his eyes over the wine glasses. And suddenly my stomach started to churn. I said, don't do this to me now! No. Oh my God, the pain. What do I hear over the loudspeakers of the music? Smile when your heart is aching. To this day, I'm like Pavlov's dog. Right? As soon as I hear that song, my stomach starts to churn.
You can't see Modern Times anymore.
No.
Over here?
Yeah, first I'd like to say thank you. I saw this film when I was, I must have been 15, and in my memory I never laughed harder than during that bar mitzvah scene. And it was great to see it again and laugh again, and it was really true to memory. And I want to ask you about shooting that and composing that, because it really was a film within a film. And was that a perfect adaptation from the book? I'm just wondering, because it was actually a standalone, kind of ridiculous, farcical piece of work. Just how did that come about during the course of making the film?
Well, it is in the book, actually, sir. It is in the book. And what I did was, the material, like the Africans jumping up and down, dancing, that strange man who was eating glass and razor blades. What happened is I went to the National Film Board in Canada, and they've been shooting these kind of documentaries films for donkey's years. So I just said, put me up anything that's African, foreign, and we kept looking at it. I said, I love that. The guy that's eating glass. And so we slowly accumulated all the material for that scene. I cut one thing that regretted. Joe Silver was in it. He gets drunk, and it's the funniest performance. But I thought the film just went on a bit too long, and I had to take it out. But that's how we got all the material together. And then, but it was in the book. It's in the book, the basic screenplay. I was going to tell you one thing. And just tell you, I said it beforehand. When I was looking, after I read the book, I wanted to make a film out of it, and I tried to raise the money in the United States. And I directed a film for AIP, Sam Markoff. I don't know if people remember him, but he was a major kind of movie mogul. And he distributed a film that I did in 1967 called Two Gentlemen Sharing. It was about the racial situation in London at that time, and it was about a black man and a white man who come to share an apartment. It's a drama, basically. And anyway, it was at the Venice Film Festival, and then Sam Markoff said to me, Ted, he said, I love your work. Have you got anything else you want to make? I said, yeah, I got this great book. And I gave him a copy of Duddy, and he read it, and he came back, and he said, Ted, what a book. Wow, what a film this is going to make. I said, this is wonderful. I'm getting that money for my film from Sam Markoff. He had the money in the distribution organization. He said, I said, great, I'm glad you liked it. He said, yeah. He says, there's only one thing. What's that, Sam? Make him a Greek. Make him a Greek. I said, the whole point is that he's Jewish. He's in a little ghetto, St. Urban's in Suriname Street, in the middle of this Catholic city. And I said, the whole point of it is he can't even buy the land in his own name. He has to use the girl to buy the land. No, if you make him a Greek, I'll fund it, but if you don't, I'm not going to do it. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Then another producer said to me, oh, I love this book, I want to make it. And I said, yeah, well, yeah, it's great, great, great. He says, only one thing. What? He said, Montreal's so parochial, let's make it in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh not parochial? I said, the whole point of it is that, I said, you understand this character, he's besieged by the Catholic community. I said, Mordecai Richler, when he was a kid, he used to have French Canadian kids dancing around him saying, you killed Jesus Christ, you killed Jesus Christ. That's the world that Duddy came from, and you understand what drives him. He has to scramble for survival. But no, he says, I'll make it, but you gotta move to Pittsburgh. I said, no, I'm not moving to Pittsburgh. Etc. Isn't that interesting? Anyway. Not until we got the Canadian government to subsidize it. Yes?
Yeah, how did you find the actress who played Yvette, and can you tell us a little bit about her? She was really magical.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked her.
Repeat the question.
Huh?
Repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. This young lady wants to know about how I discovered Micheline Langto. She was a very well-known performer in Quebecois films. And she was in the film that I saw her in, as I mentioned earlier, it was called La Nature de Bernadette. It was a Gilles Carle film, and it was selected to represent Canada at the Cannes Film Festival. And Mordecai Richler and I happened to be there. And we, as I say, we met in the south of France, and we always used to go down there, and we worked on the final draft of the script down there. And so the Cannes Festival came up, and I said, hey, there's this French-Canadian film, let's go see it. So we went and saw it, and I thought, so I leaned over to him right in the middle, I said, there's Duddy Kravitz's girlfriend. She was so great in the thing, I think she was wonderful. And it was a very difficult part, I think, in the film. I think so. Mordecai was a great writer, and all those wonderful characters, but he was not a great woman. He didn't write women very well sometimes. And I think that it's a very complex character. She has to play almost like the moral conscience of the film. And but she was a terrific actress, and it was a pleasure to work with her.
Over here.
Duddy's energy and drive are tremendous, and after he grows up, what did you and Mordecai sure. Duddy's youthful drive and energy are tremendous, and I wonder what you and Mordecai thought happened to him next, and does he keep the lake?
Does he keep the lake?
Yes.
What happens to him
What
next?
happens to Duddy? What, in your imagination, and Mordecai, what would happen to him after the movie?
Oh.
Have you ever considered a sequel? Have you ever considered a sequel?
Yes, we considered a sequel, and it got, and so the long story got screwed up by Richard. He wanted artistic control. We had him on and recently in Cannes, we were together again, and he said, God, we gotta make a sequel, Ted, we gotta make a sequel. I said, well, we had to. When Mordecai was alive, we could have had a great sequel. Now I said, who's gonna write it? But we've got all sorts of ideas. He could be a Hollywood producer. all sorts of ideas we're brooded about. But we haven't conclusively decided upon the character in later life. But certainly we're thinking about doing it very seriously.
With Richard?
With Richard, of course, yes.
A little older. Did Mordecai, no, never mind. Let's get another question.
Another question?
A couple more. Any others? Over here? Over there, right there.
Can you share a little bit of the details about how this film came to be restored? Did the folks at the Cannes Film Festival initiate this? Did you initiate this?
Well, there was a very bad time in films in the late 60s, all of the 70s. Kodak came out with a strange negative, and it turned pink.
Cheaper film stock.
Film stock turned pink. for all the films made in the second half of the 60s and in the 70s. And Martin Scorsese, whether he had a film in that period or not, but he championed, he worked and got all the money from Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, to fix up all the negatives. And my negative, it turned pink as well. So any print you made of it was pink, and the colors had faded from it. But the woman, Helga Stephenson, who runs the Canadian Academy of Film and Television, she organized people, Telefilm, Technicolor, and about six or seven other, the Directors Guild of Canada, and that print that was made to restore it cost $175,000. But it was beautiful. Did you agree it was a beautiful print that they made? You know.
It actually looks better than it ever did. My memory of it, of the old prints, because they used to print off an internegative, and it never looked as good as the camera negative image. And I think what you're looking at is what it looked like to the DP, the director of photography.
Yeah, he did.
What's wonderful about this?
It's a wonderful restoration.
Yeah, it is.
One of the difficulties in casting, of course, was that Duddy does some pretty horrendous things in this film. I mean, he's not, and there's always the problem I was facing. He lies, he cheats, he forges checks, he betrays, he wrecks, he cripples his friend, he betrays his woman, and a lot of unsympathetic things. And that was one of the reasons I was looking a long time for the person to play that part. But then the thing that affected me tremendously when I was pondering doing the character, and I was reading the letters of Chekhov, my favorite writer, and he had written a short story about a horse thief. And he was living down in Odessa, and he had a literary friend in Moscow called Savor, and he always submitted his work to him. So the boy read and wrote back to Chekhov, and he said it's a great story. And he said, but the one thing that bothers me is that you take no moral stance against the stealing of horses. So Chekhov wrote back to him and said, if you need me to tell you that stealing horses is wrong, boy, are you in moral trouble. But then he said, he came up with a great line that said, a stripling down my backbone. You see, I'm not the judge of my character. I'm your best witness. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not the judge of good. I'm the best witness. I remember that moment when it was revelatory. From a writer that I found from him. Thank you. Thanks for coming.